Hi, Nevern here, clinical psychologist and founder of Tools from Therapy. And today we're going to be talking about the science of creativity and how psychology can enhance your artistic genius. So in my therapy practice, I work with leaders from many different fields. I work with scientists, artists, engineers, journalists, and so on. And what I've realized about what it takes to be a true innovator, to be a change maker, to be a game changer in your field, what I've realized is that it takes creativity. Creativity is the secret sauce that leads to you improving your life, improving the lives of those around you, and possibly even improving the world at large. Because improving things requires creativity. It requires artistic production. It requires you looking at a problem that many people have seen and thinking about it differently. And after delving into the clinical psychology literature, the literature on how to transform your psychology, I've realized that there are 3 domains that you can transform from today that will contribute to your creativity. It will enhance it, that will release your true and creative and productive potential. So throughout this video, I'm going to be revealing the 3 domains that you can work on starting from today and how that will help you become more creative. And I'm going to give you practical tools from therapy to help you enhance that creativity, all evidence-based, all things that I've used in my clinical practice to actually help people transform their psychology and unlock their artistic genius. And let's start with the first domain, which is the thinking domain. If you want to unlock your creative potential, if you want to become an artistic genius, you have to learn how to think differently. In particular, the specific kind of thinking transformation that has to occur for you to unlock your true creative and productive best is to move from convergent thinking to divergent thinking. You see, true innovators and artistic geniuses think in a specific way. They're able to look at a problem that many people see and think has only one solution, but they're able to add 5 more solutions. They're able to look at something that someone has solved or look at something that's currently going on and see it from a different perspective. They're able to think about it in a different way. This is what separates people who are just good at what they do versus people who are great, people who are amazing. The people who are amazing at what they do, the people who show up as their best selves in their personal and professional lives are the ones who show up with a specific kind of thinking pattern, where they're not just assuming that there's one solution to the problem, but they're thinking very expansively. They're thinking of many ways that something can be solved. They're thinking about many ways in which they can use the resources that they have. This is the heart of what in psychology is known as divergent thinking. And this is the opposite of how many of us think. Many of us don't think divergently, we think convergently. In other words, we think that all problems only have one solution. So we think about life as a math sum, as 2 plus 2 equals 4. You see, in math, you get convergent solutions. If you give the equation of 2 plus 2 to many kids in the classroom, they should all converge to the same answer, which is 4. But in life, in your personal and professional life, out there in the world, there are many solutions. There are landscapes of possibility. And many people don't see that. Many people apply convergent thinking to divergent problems that could have many solutions. And because of that, they limit the possibilities. They look at things out in the world and problems out in the world, and they try to find the one solution that works. And when they find that one solution, they stick with it. Even though that solution might be mediocre, it might be average, they don't think beyond it. This is how most people go about their days. They're stuck in this haze of averageness and mediocrity and feeding off each other's solutions and never thinking beyond that, never thinking outside of the box. In other words, they never think divergently. But this will not be you, because somehow you stumbled across this video and now you have the important insight that there's a difference between convergent thinking, like in math class, versus divergent thinking, which oftentimes applies in your personal and professional life. So the tool from therapy that you can use here to develop your divergent thinking, because yes, divergent thinking can be developed over time. The scientific literature is very clear about that. The way in which you do that happens to be the same way in which psychologists like myself assess divergent thinking, which is called the alternate use task. So basically how the alternate use task works is you take a random object. For example, I've got some lip balm here. You take a random object and then you think about, okay, this is a lip balm. That's the one way in which most people use it. But what are the other ways in which this can be used? How can I creatively think about how to use this? For example, I could put some paint around here and just make circles with it. I could start a rolling game where I roll this towards some little pins that I need to knock down. I could spin this and use it as a top. I could possibly turn it over and put a bit of soil in here, plant a mini tree into it. You see, there are many uses for an object, but many of us don't think in that way. Many of us don't think divergently. We just think, oh, lip balm, and that's the end of story. But once you think divergently, once you practice the alternate use task and you take objects and you think about all the possible ways to use them, that is when you start to prime the area of your brain that's responsible for divergent thinking. And that is when you'll be able to think in fresh and innovative ways. That's when you'll start to unlock a bit of that artistic genius. You'll take the shackles off your thinking. So on a practical level, what this means is do that today. Take a random object, set a 1-minute timer, and see how many alternative use cases you can come up with the object. And then if you practice that on many objects on a daily basis for long enough, eventually you'll start thinking in that way intuitively. When you see something, you won't just be thinking about the one use. You won't just be like one of the many people who are just thinking about a single use. You'll start thinking about things in many ways. You'll start thinking divergently. And then once you start thinking that way intuitively, you're going to naturally start solving the problems in your personal and professional life and the problems that plague the world in more creative and innovative ways. Now, I'd like to pause this video just for a moment, just to inform you that the thinking domain is just one domain of personal growth. There are 9 domains of personal growth. This includes thinking, emotions, attention, the self. It includes motivation, behavior, the biological domain, the social domain, and also the contextual domain. Anything that includes personal growth, any aspect of yourself that you can improve and you can work on and you can develop will always fall within one of these 9 domains. And in these videos, I oftentimes don't have time to be able to go through all of the domains. So if you'd like a platform where you can work on your personal growth in an evidence-based way, if you want a clear and evidence-based path to personal and professional development that goes beyond the generic advice that you see online, the unscientific, pseudoscientific advice that we oftentimes encounter in the online spaces, then you can click on the link in the video description. There you'll be able to learn more about the Tools from Therapy online membership. It includes a bunch of online courses, exclusive videos within each domain that I don't share on social media, and you'll gain access to a community group as well as a private events that I run for myself and for other people, and that I invite other psychological professionals to, leading experts in the field, to discuss these areas of personal growth. I built this platform as a way to make sure that you're getting evidence-based information and that you have a place where you can go to that is trusted and that you know will get you the results in terms of your psychological transformation. So if that's something you're interested in, click on the link in the video description. And now back to the video. So now we can move on to the second domain that's going to help you boost your artistic genius, which is the emotional domain. Now, if you want to unlock your true creative potential, a brilliant insight from psychological science is that the emotional context that you are currently in matters. What emotional state are you currently in? You should know that, because that emotional state is going to color your creativity. And in particular, what the science has found is that positive emotions create the right emotional context for you to be able to enhance your creativity, to unlock your true creative potential. Because you see, when you feel positive emotions, you start to think expansively. You start to go against the norm. Positive emotions make us feel safe enough to explore alternatives. So one area of personal growth that's worth working on is the emotional domain, and in particular, building positive emotions into your life to create a context from which your true creative potential can flow. You see, an unfortunate truth about most people's lives, and just see if this is your reality as well, because it's definitely mine. One unfortunate truth about most people's lives is that they're constantly living in survival mode. Most people are living in stress. They're chronically worried. People wake up and they feel stressed. People go about their days and they're worried about finances. They're worried about relationships, their health. They're worried about whether they're being judged or they're going to be rejected or they're going to get a promotion, and the list goes on. There are so many things to worry about, so many things to feel anxious about. And because of that, many people spend their days constantly fixated on threats. And this activates the survival response in our body. And the survival response, while it might be helpful in the short term, it's not helpful for you in the long term. It is not helpful to stress about many little things because all of those little things add up and they create an overall feeling of anxiety, anger, frustration. These are all emotions that come out of the stress response. Feeling anxious, fearful, angry, frustrated, irritable. And most people are living their lives in that state, even if it's just at a mild level, their mild emotional state. And they oftentimes don't even realize this because they've been in that state for so long. Most people's mild emotional state is being in survival mode. And it's very difficult to be in that state and be creative. I think most people are actually more creative than they realize, but their creativity is dampened. Their creativity is dampened by being in survival mode. Their creativity is being sapped from them by those constant stress hormones that are constantly being pumped through their bloodstream and into their brain. And this is the important insight I want you to realize from psychological science, is that the true game changers, the true change makers, the people who show up at their best, the people who unlock their creative potential, those are the people who build positive emotions into their lives. And that positive emotion allows them to think expansively. It allows them to be at their creative best and to produce more. And don't just take my word for it. Look into the work of Professor Barbara Fredrickson. She came up with something called the broaden and build theory, which is a theory in psychology that provides a bunch of evidence that when we feel good, we are more creative. And the theory lends itself to specific techniques that you can use. So if we were to get very practical now, I want to give you 3 ways in which you can build more positive emotion in your life that will naturally lead to a creative flow and move you away from being creatively blocked. Number 1 is to practice gratitude. The more you practice on a daily basis, noticing the things that you're grateful for, the more you intentionally cultivate the habit of being appreciative, the more positive emotion you'll experience. And there are many things to be grateful for. Even when there's a tragedy that's going on in your life, even when there are many things that aren't working out, even when you're still striving for something important, there are things to be grateful about. Most of you are breathing. Most of you have technological devices which allow you to watch this video, and you have access to this sort of free education, which is something to be grateful for. Most of you have homes and shelters above you that stop the rain from hitting your head. That's something to be grateful for. It's something to be grateful for that we live in an economy where we can get things from others and sell things to others and trade and share. That's something to be grateful for. And the list goes on. The second way to build more positive emotion in your life over time is to practice random acts of kindness. If you do something positive for someone else, you gain as much of a positive emotional boost as the other person. That's what the research shows. We used to think that it's just the person who receives the kindness that feels positive emotion, but it's actually the giver as well. And that's a way to generate a win-win situation for yourself and someone else, to just be randomly kind to someone else. And the third way to build more positive emotions over time is to savor positive experiences. It's to take the things that already feel good and make them even better by paying more attention. For example, if you're eating your favorite meal, don't just gobble it down. Actually smell it before you put it into your mouth. Smell it. And when you put it into your mouth, chew it a bit longer and savor the taste. That's an example of savoring. But you can also do that if you're taking a walk. If you're taking a walk in the park and that already feels mildly good, pay more attention to the sounds of the birds, to the smells, all the scents that are in the environment that you can take in, the fragrances. And you'll notice if you do this over time, all 3 of these, if you practice gratitude on a daily basis, if you engage in at least one random act of kindness on a daily basis, and if you savor something, at least one thing on a daily basis, if you do 3 of these things at least once a day, you'll build tremendous amounts of positive emotion into your life over time. And those positive emotions will create this context out of which your true and authentic creative potential can just naturally flow. So that is the emotional domain. Now we can move on to the third and final domain, which is the attentional domain. You see, it's not just about the content of your thoughts and your emotions. That is not all that matters when it comes to creativity. There's a third domain that matters, which is the attentional domain. The attentional domain is very important because the quality of your attention, the quality of the attention that you bring to a creative task is just as important as the quality of your thinking and the quality of your emotions. Professor Nancy Andreasen, who's a leading expert in creativity and has studied this deeply, she speaks about this in a very unique way. She says that most of us think about creativity as that eureka moment. So there's a story about the Greek mathematician Archimedes. So Archimedes, during his lifetime, was tasked by the king at the time, King Herion, to figure out whether a crown was made out of pure gold or not. And Archimedes was trying to solve this problem. He was trying to figure out, how do I creatively, figure out whether this crown is made of gold or not. And as the story goes, one day Archimedes sat in his tub, and when he sat in the tub, which was full of water, the water got displaced out of the tub. And then in that moment, he realized that the amount of water that was displaced out of the tub was equal to his body density. And so in that moment, he had that realization that he could do the same thing with the crown. He could put the crown in water, see how much water it displaced, and then based on his understandings of how dense gold is, he'd be able to work out whether the crown was gold or not. And as legend goes, in that moment he said, Eureka. And so most people think creativity is about that Eureka moment, where you say, Eureka, I've got it. You're hit with inspiration, and the inspiration flows through you, and that's what creativity is about. But Professor Andreasen, she goes a step further to say that the creativity did not just happen in that moment. That is just one stage of the creativity. That's the third stage, actually, and she calls it illumination. That's when the idea is illuminated. But prior to that, there are two other important stages, and those two stages have a lot to do with the attentional domain, because your attention has to be used in both of those stages that will eventually lead up to the illumination stage. So the first stage is actually preparation. Preparation is when you immerse yourself in something. So let's say there's a problem you want to solve. You immerse yourself in it. You read about it. You read about the problem. You try to understand it from different perspectives. You engage with it. You pay attention to it. So preparation stage involves giving your attention fully to that problem. And for Archimedes, he was already a Greek mathematician. So he already understood mathematical principles around density and buoyancy. He had given a lot of his attention to mathematics prior to having that creativity just spring up when he sat in the bathtub. And then the second stage, after preparation, is actually something that is a bit counterintuitive, but it's a stage called incubation. It basically is a stage where you step away from the task, where you don't give your attention to it, where you basically allow your subconscious mind to start making links and making connections. You see, many of the greats, many of the true creative artists and geniuses throughout history, they've realized things while not thinking about the problem. It's been while they've been on a walk, or while taking a shower, or while taking a nap. That is when many people are hit with inspiration. And Professor Andreasen says that this is because during the incubation phase, when you step away from a problem, when you don't think about it, your subconscious mind is still working, and that's when it can create links. That's when it can think expansively and create connections between things that your conscious mind wouldn't necessarily figure out. And so, for example, with Archimedes, he had his insight while taking a bath. He wasn't in his office thinking very hard about this thing, giving all his attention to it, and then having the insight. No. He engaged with the first stage, which was preparation and immersing himself in mathematics and other principles. But then he had the incubation phase where he decided to take a bath, where he stepped away from the problem. And then that's when the third phase kicked in. That's when illumination happened. And so what this means for you on a practical level is that if you want to use the attentional domain to become more creative, you have to learn how to cycle between the preparation phase and the incubation phase. You have to learn how to give more of your attention to the problem and understanding it, reading about it, immersing yourself in it, but then cycling into an incubation phase where you take a walk, where you step out of thinking about the problem for a while, or you let your mind wander and you see where your mind goes, but you don't consciously try to control your thinking. You don't consciously try to solve the problem. You take a nap, maybe you even have a night's rest, you sleep on it, and then you allow the incubation to lead to subconscious processing of the problem that you're trying to creatively and innovatively solve. So again, I must remind you, if you want to take your personal development more seriously, click on the link in the video description. There you will learn more about the Tools from Therapy membership, and you'll have me as your personal guide, your accountability partner, to help you psychologically transform in the ways that you need to unlock your true potential and make a positive impact. If you decide not to do that, good luck with implementing these three areas of creativity and creative potential: the thinking domain, the emotional domain, and the attentional domain. Use all of the tools that I've given you, and good luck on your journey on unlocking your potential and making a positive impact in the world.